Hello and Happy New Year everybody, and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. We're going to be checking out Kneel Before Zod issue 1 this week by Joe Casey and Dan McDade. Zod's rule of Jerkol, now called New Kandor, is examined thoroughly this opening issue as we catch up on what the evil Kryptonian general has been up to and find that he's at a bit of a crossroads in his life. Not only is he in a bit of a political war with the United Planets over the secrecy of New Kandor and what they are doing, but he is also having a bit of a midlife crisis to boot. Zod is first and foremost a warrior, but when there is no war for him to fight or an enemy to crush, he becomes lost, since what is a warrior meant to do in peacetime? Joe Casey dives into this premise really well and introduces a neat aspect about Zod we've never really seen, in that he is haunted by visions of Jor-El, who acts almost like his consciousness, telling him what he is doing on New Kandor will end up turning out just like Krypton, since he's repeating the mistakes of the past without realizing it. Zod of course refuses to listen to this visage of Jor-El and continues on with his plans, which we discover are pretty out there. Firstly, his wife Ursa is running the planet's eugenics program, enslaving a lot of the natives and trying to turn them into Kryptonian powered warriors, and she is having some success, albeit not what Zod had ultimately hoped. We also learn that she is pregnant with their second child, something Zod almost spitefully waves off but doesn't really pay much attention to. Secondly, his son Zod, who was the focus of the little backup for this issue in the recent Action Comics issue 1060, has grown disillusioned with his father and sees that he is changed as a person, becoming softer in his eyes, and thus doesn't think that his father is fit to rule New Kandor. So he goes against his father's wishes and actually learns that he is secretly building some sort of planet-killing super weapon, one that uses New Kandor's planet core as the weapon. Things get even more interesting here as Zod has no intention of actually using the weapon, only having it as a deterrent for anyone who would challenge him, mostly the United Planets, since he knows that using the weapon or them using weapons against him would assure that he uses weapons, and that would of course lead to mutually assured destruction of both his world and the United Planets or whoever attacks him. This is a very Cold War-esque plot point and adds a little bit of grounding to the story, and I actually quite like that about Zod. I like that it's a weapon that he doesn't intend to use because he knows that in using it will just cause so much devastation and so much loss that he can't fathom to end up using it, but he'll still threaten people with the fact that he will use it. Law goes against his father, and to show the boys some humility, Zod casts him out, demanding that he leave the planet. This all feels very similar to Game of Thrones and how that series deals with family drama and politics, and I'm looking forward to even more in-depth looks at Zod and Ursa's dynamic in the upcoming issues, specifically around the traditions of the House of El, since that was a big part of why Law had to be cast out, since apparently that's a tradition in the House of El where they have to go out into the galaxy and kind of face trials of their own without any help from family, just to sort of strengthen them. So I'm intrigued to see where that will go, and I know obviously Law is going off into his own book with Sinestro's son, and it's going to be called Sinister Sons, kind of a play on the Super Sons. I think it's called the Sinister Sons or something similar to that, but that's coming very soon. I'm not exactly sure when though, but my hope is we do get to see a bit more of these traditions of the House of Zod, since we've seen a lot of the House of El traditions over in Action Comics and the Superman books. So it would be cool to see the inverse of that and how the Zods go about celebrating their history, their familial history and their lineage. But so far Casey has done a fantastic job at showing us the Zod family is a complete opposite in every way to the Superman family, since there is no love or friendship to be found there. It's all just hard lessons and beatings, and I'm happy it wasn't shied away from either, and if anything it doubles down on that as a huge part of Zod's story, since this is a man who's desperate to see his lineage continue and to see his name continue out in the galaxy, but it's also one he wants to continue on his own terms, as he's afraid his son is too weak to live up to his name. It's a much deeper, complex look at the character than what we've gotten in the past, where most writers just use Zod as something that Superman can hit without worrying about putting his hand through his skull. Apart from all of the awesome character work, work, there is also some big implications for what Zod has planned for New Kandor, as we learn that he is still in possession of the original bottled city of Kandor, which he originally stole at the end of the Joshua Williamson Batman Superman arc, with him and Ra's al Ghul trying to resurrect them. Zod plans on resizing the city with the new technology he has and unleashing the Kryptonians onto New Kandor to help populate their new Krypton, as it were. This is a rather interesting plot point, since not only is it rather similar to the New Krypton saga, but also Brainiac right now is going after Superman and his family, having claimed multiple times through Williamson's own book that Kryptonians are his to own and only he can own them. So I have to assume that that will factor into that story. And of course, Williamson wrote the original story that had Zod take Kandor and is writing that Brainiac story over in the Superman ongoing, so I wouldn't put it past him to actually bring that back somehow, and this is Joe sort of teeing him up for that, and I assume there was a discussion about that, about linking both stories, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with that, especially because Superman doesn't actually know what Zod is up to at the moment and doesn't know that he's trying to recreate Krypton and make more Kryptonians, which is something that's never really gone over well in the comics. It's always ended terribly, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when that gets revealed to the larger galaxy. Dan McDade joins Casey as the series artist with his gritty dark style, which suits Zod and his family so well. The Superman family are almost always drawn as these kind of really pretty fashion model looking human beings, almost perfect in every way, but I like how McDade does the opposite for Zod and his family, giving Zod this rather hard worker vibe. His facial features are rough and lived in, and his armor, which has been his go-to costume for about a decade now, looks great, though I do hope this series brings with it a costume change, and I'd love to see maybe a return to the military uniform Zod, since that would reflect his new world and him trying to militarize and get back to his roots in the military a little bit more. I think that would be quite cool. I do like again, going back to Game of Thrones, how a lot of the characters, specifically Ursa, has this big fur cloak, very reminiscent of something like a House Stark would wear, and even Lord Zod's costume is very sort of militarized or very regal with its high collar and everything. I still don't like his haircut. His haircut is whack and it's really strange, and I just wish he would either shave the hair or just grow it all out. I just don't like the whole side of it being shaved and just the other side is really long. It just looks really too weird. Zod's very first solo series is off to a brilliant start, giving the general some much needed depth while also carving out a very Game of Thrones-esque direction for him and his family. I'm going to give this issue a 9.5 out of 10. This exceeded all my expectations for what a Zod series could and should be. I'm very much excited to see where Casey's going to take these characters and how it's going to tie into the upcoming Brainiac storyline, since it seems to be teeing up for something to be tied into that in a big way, especially since it paid off a lot of Williamson's old story beats from his Batman Superman. So I'm excited for this series and I can't wait to read more.